The newspapers called him many things. The man of bad luck, the wanderer, death's shadow. But for the last 30 years, America had known him by only one name: the Cursed Hunter. There were 32 missing persons cases linked to him across 11 states, 17 unexplained fires, 9 law enforcement officers dead, and one impossible pattern. Samuel Hunter always arrived before tragedy struck. In the spring of 2026, a little town called Black Creek, Montana, woke to the sight of an old blue pickup truck rolling down Main Street. Behind the wheel sat a 68-year-old man with tired eyes, a weathered cowboy hat, and a leather journal that looked older than some of the buildings around him. By sunset, the town would lose one of its children. By midnight, Samuel Hunter would be in handcuffs. And before the week was over, Black Creek would discover a secret that had been buried for more than 30 years. Because Samuel Hunter wasn't running from death. He was following it. And death had led him home. Rain fell softly as Samuel parked beside an abandoned gas station at the edge of Black Creek. The sign hanging above the road read, "Population 2,814. He stared at it for a long moment before reaching for the worn leather journal resting on the passenger seat. Inside were names, dates, places, and one symbol. A circle with 3 lines carved through its center. He had seen it in Colorado, in Oregon, in Wyoming, and 30 years ago, outside his own home on the night his wife died. Samuel ran his fingers across an old photograph tucked into the journal. Lucy stood smiling in a field of wildflowers, her arm wrapped around a young boy with messy brown hair and bright blue eyes. Tommy, 8 years old. Missing since June 14, 1996. Samuel closed the journal. "Not this time," he whispered. "I'm bringing you home." Main Street was quiet as he stepped into Martha's diner for breakfast. Conversation stopped almost immediately. Samuel was used to that. People always sensed something about him. Perhaps it was the scars on his hands, or the way his eyes constantly searched every room. Or perhaps tragedy simply had a scent. A waitress approached cautiously. "Passing through?" Samuel looked out the window toward the mountains. "No." The waitress frowned. "Family here?" "Not anymore." Before she could ask another question, the bell above the diner's door rang. Sheriff Robert Hayes stepped inside. 59 years old. Broad shoulders. A face carved by too many years of regret. The sheriff's expression changed the moment he saw Samuel. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Then the sheriff quietly asked, "How long has it been?" Samuel felt his stomach tighten. "Long enough." The waitress looked between them. "You two know each other?" Neither answered. Sheriff Hayes finally pulled out a chair and sat opposite Samuel. "You should have stayed gone." Samuel's eyes narrowed. "I don't have that luxury." The sheriff leaned forward. "If you're here, it means you've seen the symbol again." Silence. Then Samuel slowly opened the journal and turned it toward him. Sheriff Hayes went pale. The symbol had been carved into a tree just outside Black Creek 2 nights earlier. "I was afraid of that," the sheriff whispered. Samuel's voice was barely audible. "How many children live in this town?" The sheriff didn't answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice trembled. 73. Samuel closed the journal. "Then we're already too late." Across town, 8-year-old Ellie Parker rode her bicycle home from school, completely unaware that someone was watching from the woods. Someone who had been watching for days. Someone wearing a silver ring engraved with a circle and 3 lines. As the evening sun disappeared behind the mountains, Ellie heard a voice call her name from somewhere among the trees. And for the first time in 30 years, Samuel Hunter felt the familiar sensation return. The feeling that always came before someone vanished. He looked toward the forest and quietly said the words he had prayed he would never say again. "They found me." Ellie Parker never made it home. At 6:17 p.m., her bicycle was found lying on its side near the entrance to Black Creek Forest. One shoe rested beside it. The other was never found. By the time Sheriff Hayes arrived at the scene, half the town had gathered behind the police tape. Parents held their children tightly. Reporters began appearing from neighboring counties. And standing at the edge of the crowd, his cowboy hat dripping with rain, was Samuel Hunter. The moment the sheriff saw him, he felt a knot form in his stomach. "Tell me she wasn't taken," Samuel said quietly. Hayes didn't answer. He didn't need to. Samuel had seen that look before. 32 times. Emily Carter pulled her rental car onto the shoulder, just as officers began searching the tree line. For 3 years, she had been chasing stories that lived in the shadows, cold cases, disappearances, unsolved mysteries. And no story fascinated her more than Samuel Hunter. Every article she had read painted the same picture. Wherever Samuel Hunter went, tragedy followed. She grabbed her camera and recorder and pushed through the crowd. "Emily Carter, Northwest Chronicle," she announced, flashing her press credentials. "Sheriff, is it true Samuel Hunter is in Black Creek?" The sheriff's expression darkened. "Not tonight, Miss Carter." "Is he a suspect?" "No comment." That was all she needed. Within minutes, her headline was already writing itself. "The Cursed Hunter Strikes Again." Samuel ignored the stares as he approached the bicycle. The years had taught him to look beyond what people saw. He crouched beside the front wheel. Mud. Broken branches. And then he saw it. Carved into the trunk of an old pine tree. A circle. 3 lines through its center. Fresh. His blood ran cold. "No," he whispered. The sheriff saw his expression immediately. "What is it?" Samuel didn't look up. "They're getting careless." Emily quickly raised her camera. "Who are they?" Samuel slowly stood. "For your sake, Miss Carter, I hope you never find out." At 9:42 p.m., the search party entered the forest. Samuel walked beside Sheriff Hayes, while volunteers carried flashlights through the darkness. "You still haven't told me why you're back," Hayes said. Samuel's eyes remained fixed ahead. 3 weeks ago, I received a package." Hayes stopped walking. "What kind of package?" Without a word, Samuel pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. It was a photograph. The sheriff nearly dropped his flashlight. The image showed an older Tommy Hunter standing beside a calendar. The date circled in red. April 14th, 2026. "He'd be 38 now," Samuel said softly. "Someone wanted me to know he's alive." Hayes stared at the photograph in disbelief. "That's impossible. I've spent 30 years praying you're right." Suddenly, one of the volunteers shouted, "We found something." Everyone ran toward a clearing near the river. Lying in the mud was a silver bracelet. Ellie's bracelet. Beside it sat a small wooden box. Sheriff Hayes opened it carefully. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph. Emily felt her heart stop. It showed Ellie Parker. Alive. Crying. Holding today's newspaper. Written across the bottom in black ink were 5 words. He should have stopped hunting. Every eye in the clearing slowly turned toward Samuel Hunter. For a moment, no one spoke. Then a voice from the crowd shouted, "You brought this here." Another followed. "He's the reason she's gone." Emily looked from the photograph to the old man standing silently beneath the trees. For the first time in her career, she wasn't sure what to believe. As thunder rolled across Black Creek, Sheriff Hayes reluctantly stepped forward. "I'm sorry, Samuel." Two deputies approached. The handcuffs clicked shut around Samuel Hunter's wrists. And somewhere deep within the forest, unseen by everyone present, a man wearing a silver ring smiled. Black Creek Sheriff's Office had only 4 holding cells. Samuel Hunter had occupied 3 of them over the last 30 years. At least, that's what Sheriff Hayes told Emily, as they watched the old man sit quietly behind the bars. "He was arrested before?" she asked. Hayes nodded. "Colorado, Idaho, Oregon. For murder?" "No." "Then for what?" The sheriff stared through the glass. "For being in the wrong place before the wrong thing happened." Emily frowned. "That's impossible. I used to think so too." Samuel sat alone on the narrow bench, turning Tommy's photograph over in his hands. 30 years. 30 years of chasing shadows. 30 years of arriving just a little too late. His eyes drifted to the old pocket watch in his palm. It had stopped at exactly 8:14 p.m. The same time Tommy disappeared. It had never ticked again. Not once. A deputy approached the cell. "You've got a visitor." Samuel didn't look up. "Emily Carter." "I know." The deputy hesitated. "How?" Samuel finally met his eyes. "Because she's been following me for 6 months." Emily entered slowly, recorder in hand. "You knew about me?" Samuel gave a faint smile. "You published 12 articles about me." 11. "The 12th is already written." She froze. "The cursed hunter strikes again." For the first time, Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. "Who are you?" Samuel leaned back. "That's the wrong question." "Then what's the right one?" He looked directly at her. "Who keeps finding me?" The room fell silent. Emily clicked on her recorder. 32 missing persons. 17 fires. 9 deaths. "Why are you always there?" Samuel was quiet for several moments. Then he said something that would haunt her for years. "Because they want witnesses." "They?" "The people who took my son." Emily folded her arms. "And who are these people?" "I don't know." "You spent 30 years hunting people you can't identify?" "No." Samuel's expression hardened. "I've spent 30 years letting them know I'm still alive." At that moment, Sheriff Hayes burst into the room. His face had gone completely white. "We've got a problem." Samuel immediately stood. "She's gone." Hayes stopped. "How did you?" "Ellie Parker is gone." The sheriff swallowed hard. "Her parents just received a package." Samuel closed his eyes. "They've changed their pattern." Emily's pulse quickened. "What was in the package?" Hayes hesitated. "You need to see this yourself." 10 minutes later, the entire station stood in silence around the evidence table. It was a videotape. No return address. No fingerprints. Written on the front were 3 words. "For Samuel Hunter." "No," Samuel whispered. Sheriff Hayes inserted the tape. Static filled the screen. Then a little girl appeared. Ellie Parker. She was sitting in a chair beneath a dim light, visibly frightened. "Mom?" she said softly. Emily covered her mouth. Then a voice from behind the camera spoke. A man's voice. Cold. Calm. Unfamiliar. "Tell Mr. Hunter what you told us." Ellie's eyes filled with tears. He said he was sorry." Samuel's face drained of color. The man behind the camera continued. "Tell him the other part." Ellie looked directly into the camera. "They said Tommy misses you." The room went completely silent. Samuel staggered backward, as if someone had punched him in the chest. For 30 years, no one had spoken his son's name. No one. Sheriff Hayes turned toward him slowly. Samuel! But Samuel wasn't listening. His eyes were fixed on the screen. Because, just before the tape cut to black, he saw something in the corner of the room behind Ellie. A calendar. The date written across it was impossible. June 14, 1996. The day Tommy disappeared. And standing in the reflection of a nearby mirror was a man wearing Samuel Hunter's old park ranger uniform. Act 4. The night Tommy vanished, 19:00, 26:00. The videotape ended at 11:14 p.m. No one in the sheriff's office spoke for nearly a minute. Samuel stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the black television screen. June 14, 1996. He had spent 30 years trying to forget that date. And 30 years failing. I need everyone out, Sheriff Hayes finally said. The deputies hesitated before leaving the room. Only Samuel, Hayes, and Emily remained. Samuel slowly removed his cowboy hat and placed it on the table. I've never told anyone what happened that night. Emily reached for her recorder. Then tell me. For a moment, Samuel looked every one of his 68 years. Then he began. It was Tommy's birthday weekend. Black Creek looked very different in 1996. There were more families then. More laughter. Samuel was 38 years old and had spent nearly a decade as a park ranger. Lucy had packed enough food for a week, even though they were only staying 2 days. Your wife! Samuel smiled faintly. She worried enough for 3 people. And Tommy. Tommy had wanted to be just like his father. He wouldn't take that ranger hat off his head, Samuel said. Slept in it for 2 weeks. Emily noticed the tears beginning to form in the old man's eyes. He kept asking if I'd finally teach him how to track deer. What did you tell him? Samuel's smile disappeared. I told him we had all the time in the world. The campsite sat beside Silver Pine Lake, 20 miles north of Black Creek. Samuel remembered every detail. The smell of the campfire. Lucy singing softly while washing dishes. Tommy chasing fireflies through the trees. And then, the whistle. Low. 3 short bursts. Samuel stopped speaking. Sheriff Hayes immediately looked away. You remember it too, don't you? Samuel asked quietly. The sheriff nodded. I've heard it in my nightmares for 30 years. Emily frowned. What whistle? Neither man answered immediately. It came from the woods, Samuel finally said. 3 short bursts. Exactly 7 minutes apart. The room had suddenly become very cold. Tommy had heard it first. Dad, someone's out there. Samuel had laughed. It was probably an owl. But Lucy didn't think so. She remembered saying something that would haunt Samuel forever. Don't let him out of your sight. I promised her I wouldn't, Samuel whispered. Emily barely breathed. What happened next? Samuel's hands began to shake. I broke my promise. At 8:14 p.m., Tommy asked if he could walk to the lake. Just 5 minutes, Dad. Samuel had hesitated. Then he nodded. 5 minutes. It was the worst decision of his life. At exactly 8:19 p.m., the lights around the campsite went out. All of them. Flashlights. Lanterns. Even the batteries in Samuel's radio died simultaneously. And then the whistle came again. 3 short bursts. This time much closer. Lucy immediately screamed Tommy's name. No answer. Samuel grabbed his flashlight. Nothing. He called for his son until his voice gave out. Still nothing. Then, 20 yards from the lake, he found Tommy's ranger hat lying in the dirt. And beside it, the symbol, carved into a tree. Fresh. Emily's hand trembled as she wrote in her notebook. Did the police believe you? Samuel laughed bitterly. Would you? No footprints. No witnesses. No body. Just an 8-year-old boy who disappeared into thin air. They searched for 6 months, Sheriff Hayes said quietly. The largest manhunt Montana had ever seen. And they found nothing? Samuel looked at her. No. He reached into his jacket and carefully removed a folded piece of paper. I found this. Emily unfolded it slowly. It was a child's drawing. A picture of Tommy holding hands with another little boy beneath a large building. Written in crayon across the top were 6 words. Dad, they said I'm special. Emily felt her blood turn to ice. On the back of the drawing was a date. June 13, 1996. The day before Tommy disappeared. No one could explain how he drew a building he'd never seen. Samuel said. What building? Samuel pointed toward the sketch. A large concrete structure surrounded by pine trees. Emily's eyes widened. I've seen this before. Both men looked at her. Where? She swallowed hard. In one of the photographs from your case file. Samuel froze. What photograph? Emily slowly opened her bag and removed a folder. Because 30 years ago, another child disappeared from Black Creek. The room went silent. Her name was Abigail Reed. Samuel's face drained of color. She vanished exactly 1 year before Tommy. Emily opened the file. And she drew the same building. The sheriff's office archives occupied a single room in the basement. Dust covered the shelves. Forgotten cases lined the walls. And somewhere among them, Samuel Hunter was about to discover that his son had never been alone. Emily spread the files across a large wooden table. There were 5 of them, she said quietly. Samuel looked up. What? Not 2. 5. Sheriff Hayes lowered his head. I should have told you years ago. Samuel's eyes narrowed. You knew? Hayes didn't answer immediately. When Tommy disappeared, the state police took over. They told us the cases weren't connected. And you believed them? No. Then why did you stay silent? The sheriff's voice broke. Because they told me if I talked, my daughter would disappear too. The room went silent. Emily opened the first file. Abigail Reed. Age 7. Missing, June 14, 1995. Tommy Hunter. Age 8. Missing, June 14, 1996. Lucas Bell. Age 9. Missing, June 14, 1998. Hannah Price. Age 8. Missing, June 14, 2001. Mason Cole. Age 10. Missing, June 14, 2008. Every child. Every disappearance. The same date. June 14th. Samuel felt his legs weaken. My God. Emily continued. There's more. Each child had reported hearing the same thing days before vanishing. A whistle. 3 short bursts. And every child had drawn the same building. Samuel stared at the sketches laid out before him. 5 different children. 5 different years. 5 identical drawings. Concrete walls. Tall pine trees. A red door. And a clock tower permanently frozen at 8:14. Tommy's time. Samuel suddenly realized something. The clock. Emily looked up. What about it? It isn't showing the time. He pointed toward the drawing. It's a room number. Silence. Room 814. At that moment, Sheriff Hayes opened an old evidence box hidden at the back of the archive room. I prayed I'd never have to show anyone this. Inside was a cassette tape. Marked, property of Sheriff Robert Hayes. Do not play. Samuel's expression hardened. What is it? The sheriff's eyes filled with tears. It's why I stopped helping you. Emily inserted the tape into an old recorder. Static. Then a voice. A little girl's voice. Daddy? Sheriff Hayes immediately began crying. It was his daughter. Sweetheart, a younger version of Hayes said. If you tell Samuel Hunter the truth, they'll take me too. The tape ended. Emily stared at him in disbelief. How old was she? 9. Where is she now? Hayes looked away. I haven't spoken to her in 15 years. Before anyone could respond, the lights in the archive room suddenly went out. Darkness. Then, 3 short whistles echoed outside the station. Samuel stopped breathing. No. The whistles came again. Closer. Emily's voice trembled. What is that? Samuel slowly reached for his hat. It's how they announce themselves. The emergency lights flickered on. Red. Dim. Unnatural. Then every computer screen in the sheriff's office came to life simultaneously. A single sentence appeared on each monitor. He was never supposed to find room 814. Samuel's hands began to shake. Because beneath the message was a photograph taken less than an hour earlier. Ellie Parker sat beside an older man with gray hair and blue eyes. The same eyes Samuel saw in the mirror every morning. Attached to the image was a note. Happy reunion, Dad. Nobody slept that night. The photograph sat in the center of the evidence table like a loaded weapon. Samuel had spent half his life imagining what Tommy would look like as a man. He had imagined birthdays, graduations, a wedding, children, but never this. Never a photograph sent by the people who had stolen him. Emily studied the image again. There has to be a clue. There is, Samuel said quietly. Both she and Sheriff Hayes looked at him. The mountains. Samuel pointed to the background behind Tommy and Ellie. Barely visible through a small window were 3 mountain peaks. I've seen them before. Where? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the archive shelves and pulled out a map of Montana. His finger stopped on a location less than 60 miles from Black Creek. Silver Pine National Preserve. Emily's eyes widened. That's where Tommy disappeared. Samuel nodded. And where Abigail disappeared. And Lucas. And Hannah. And Mason. For 30 years, Samuel had searched every inch of those woods. He had found nothing. Until now. There was an old government research facility near the preserve, Sheriff Hayes said quietly. Samuel slowly turned toward him. You never told me that. Because it closed in 1982. What's it called? The sheriff hesitated. Then he whispered 2 words that made Samuel's blood run cold. Black Ridge. At 2:13 a.m., the 3 of them stood outside the sheriff's office preparing to leave. I'm coming with you, Emily said. No. I'm not asking. Samuel looked at her for a long moment. People who follow me tend to disappear. Then it's a good thing I don't scare easily. For the first time in years, Samuel almost smiled. The drive to Silver Pine took less than an hour. Rain hammered against the windshield as Samuel's old pickup climbed the mountain road. Every mile felt like stepping backward through time. There, he finally said. Hidden among the trees sat a rusted chain-link fence. Beyond it stood a massive concrete structure, partially swallowed by the forest. Emily's breath caught in her throat. It was identical to the children's drawings. The clock tower. The red door. The endless rows of windows. And carved into the concrete entrance. Black Ridge Facility. Samuel couldn't speak. For 30 years, he had been standing less than an hour away from his son. Inside, the building felt frozen in time. Dust covered the floors. Old medical equipment lay scattered throughout the hallways. Patient records lined the walls. Emily picked one up. Samuel. He turned. She handed him the file. At the top, in faded black letters, it read, Subject 814. Status, active. Samuel's hands began to tremble. Beneath the title was a photograph of Tommy. Age 8. Date, June 14, 1996. No! Sheriff Hayes opened another file. Then another. Each one contained the name of a missing child. Abigail Reed. Lucas Bell. Hannah Price. Mason Cole. All designated as subjects. What was this place? Emily whispered. No one answered. Then, from somewhere deep within the building, they heard it. 3 short whistles. The same whistle. 30 years later. The sound echoed through the hallway. Samuel immediately drew the revolver he hadn't touched since retiring as a ranger. Stay behind me. They followed the sound down a long corridor until they reached a heavy steel door. Painted across it in faded red letters were the words, Room 814. Samuel's heart pounded so loudly he could barely hear himself breathe. 30 years. 30 years had led to this door. Slowly, he reached for the handle. Locked. Then a voice spoke over the building's intercom. Old. Calm. Familiar. Hello, Samuel. Every hair on the back of his neck stood up. You've been looking for your son for a very long time. Emily's face went pale. Who is that? The voice ignored her. I often wondered which would arrive first. Your death or your curiosity. Samuel tightened his grip on the revolver. Show yourself. A soft chuckle echoed through the building. Open the door, Samuel. His hand shook as he inserted the old brass key hanging beside the frame. The lock clicked. Slowly, the steel door creaked open. Inside sat a single wooden chair beneath a dim light. And resting on the chair was Tommy's ranger hat, untouched by time. Beside it lay a handwritten note. Samuel picked it up with trembling hands. It contained only 4 words. He remembers you now? Then, for the first time in 30 years, Samuel heard a voice from somewhere in the darkness behind him. A man's voice. Older. Deeper. But unmistakable. Dad? Dad? The voice echoed through the darkness behind them. For a moment time stopped. Samuel Hunter had imagined this moment every day for 30 years. He had imagined anger. He had imagined relief. He had imagined falling to his knees. But nothing had prepared him for the sound of his son's voice. Slowly, Samuel turned around. Standing at the far end of the corridor was a man in his late 30s. Gray flannel shirt. Dark jeans. Blue eyes. Lucy Hunter's smile. And Tommy's ranger badge hanging around his neck. Samuel's revolver slipped from his hand and hit the floor. No, he whispered. The man took a hesitant step forward. It's me. 30 years of grief came crashing down all at once. Samuel crossed the distance between them in seconds and wrapped his arms around the son he had buried 1,000 times in his mind. For several moments, neither spoke. Then Samuel finally managed to say the words he had carried in his heart for 3 decades. I never stopped looking for you. Tommy's voice broke. I know. Emily quietly lowered her camera. Even Sheriff Hayes wiped tears from his eyes. This was supposed to be impossible. And yet, here they were. A father holding his son for the first time in 30 years. Samuel pulled back, placing both hands on Tommy's face, as if afraid he might disappear again. Did they hurt you? Tommy didn't answer. That was answer enough. Minutes later, the 5 of them sat inside room 814. The room was untouched. A small bed, books, children's drawings, and hundreds of photographs. Every single one of Samuel. Emily walked slowly around the room. There were pictures of him from every stage of his life. Samuel sitting beside Lucy at a county fair. Samuel standing at Tommy's memorial service. Samuel visiting his wife's grave. Samuel sleeping in his truck outside a diner in Nebraska. "They've been watching you," she whispered. Tommy shook his head. "No." Everyone looked at him. "I have." Silence. "What?" Samuel asked. Tommy lowered his eyes. "They told me you stopped looking for me." Samuel felt his heart break. "But I found your picture every year." He pointed toward the walls. "I made them bring me one." Samuel couldn't speak. Every year for 30 years, his son had been waiting. And every year, he had been told his father had abandoned him. "Who are they?" Emily finally asked. Tommy's expression changed immediately. "They call themselves the Shepherds." "The Shepherds?" Hayes repeated. Tommy nodded. "They take children they believe are gifted." "Gifted how?" "They never told us." "Us." Samuel caught the word immediately. "How many?" Tommy's eyes filled with tears. "There were 23 of us." The room went silent. 23 children." Tommy nodded. "Only 6 are still alive." Samuel's knees nearly gave out. "What happened to the others?" Tommy looked toward the floor. "They couldn't go home." Emily frowned. "Why not?" Tommy's answer chilled everyone to the bone. "Because after enough years, you stop remembering who you were." Then came the question Samuel feared most. "Your mother," he began softly. "Did you know?" Tommy closed his eyes. "I watched her funeral." Samuel stopped breathing. "What?" "They let me watch from a distance." "No. I was there, Dad." Tears streamed down Tommy's face. "I was 27 feet away, and I couldn't even tell you I was alive." Samuel collapsed into a chair. 30 years. His son had been alive. Watching. Waiting. Unable to come home. Suddenly, the building's intercom crackled to life. "Reunions are such extraordinary things." Tommy's face immediately turned pale. "He's here." "Who?" Emily asked. Tommy looked toward the ceiling. "The man who took me." A calm voice filled the facility. "Good evening, Samuel." Samuel recognized it instantly. The voice from the videotape. "You spent 30 years hunting ghosts." The lights flickered. "And now you've finally found one." A monitor on the wall suddenly came to life. An elderly man in a black suit appeared on the screen. He smiled warmly. "My name is Dr. Adrian Voss." Samuel's blood ran cold. "And congratulations." The old man's smile widened. "You've just completed the first part of the experiment." The monitor flickered in the darkness. Dr. Adrian Voss sat perfectly still, his hands folded neatly in his lap. He looked less like a monster and more like someone's grandfather. That somehow made him even more terrifying. "You took my son," Samuel said, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Voss smiled. "No, Samuel. We saved him." Tommy immediately looked away. "Don't listen to him," he said quietly. "That's what they always say." For 30 years, Samuel Hunter had imagined confronting the man responsible for destroying his life. He had envisioned rage, violence, revenge. Instead, all he felt was exhaustion. "Why?" he asked. Dr. Voss leaned forward. "Because the world needs shepherds." Emily folded her arms. "You're talking about kidnapped children." "No, Miss Carter. I'm talking about potential." The old man pressed a button on his desk. The monitor behind him illuminated. 23 faces appeared. Children, each with a file number beneath their photograph. Subject 203. Subject 417. Subject 592. Subject 814. Tommy closed his eyes. They made us memorize our numbers. Samuel's heart sank. You gave my son a number? Dr. Voss smiled. No, Samuel. We gave him a purpose. One by one, the photographs changed. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The children were now adults. Doctors, scientists, military officers, judges, even a United States senator. The Shepherds have spent 70 years identifying exceptional children, Dr. Voss said calmly. You expect us to believe that? Emily asked. It doesn't matter what you believe. It matters what history will remember. Samuel felt sick. You're saying all of this was justified? No. Dr. Voss's smile faded for the first time. I'm saying it worked. Tommy suddenly stood. You don't get to do that. The room fell silent. For the first time since they had met him, Tommy looked angry. You don't get to talk about Abigail. Voss said nothing. You don't get to talk about Lucas. His voice broke. And you definitely don't get to talk about Hannah. Samuel immediately noticed the names Tommy hadn't mentioned. Tommy. Tommy's eyes filled with tears. They didn't survive. The room became impossibly quiet. They kept telling us we'd see our families again if we behaved. Samuel couldn't breathe. But after enough years, people stopped asking. Dr. Voss interrupted softly. Trauma is a remarkable teacher. Emily stared at the screen in horror. You're a monster. No, Miss Carter. Monsters destroy the future. I built it. He pressed another button. A new photograph appeared. Lucy Hunter. Samuel immediately stood. No. Taken 2 weeks before her death, the image showed Lucy standing outside Black Ridge facility. You lied to me, Samuel whispered. Tommy's face went pale. What is that? Dr. Voss sighed. Your mother was a persistent woman. Samuel felt the room begin to spin. What did you do to her? Nothing. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to remember. And then, like a lightning strike, the memory returned. Samuel staggered backward. Lucy standing in the kitchen. A letter in her hand. The words she spoke the night before the fire. I know where Tommy is. No, Samuel whispered. For 30 years, he had convinced himself grief had stolen his memories. But now he remembered. Lucy had found Black Ridge. She had found Tommy. And she had died 48 hours later. You killed her, Samuel shouted. Dr. Voss remained silent for several moments. Then he spoke the most chilling words of the entire night. No, Samuel. The old man's eyes settled on Tommy. Your son did. Silence. Absolute silence. Tommy stopped breathing. Emily stared at the screen. Sheriff Hayes dropped the flashlight in his hand. Samuel slowly turned toward his son. What did he just say? Tommy's face had gone completely pale. I don't remember. Dr. Voss nodded sadly. That's the problem with memory suppression. Samuel's world collapsed around him. Tell me you're lying. The old man leaned toward the camera. Ask your son where he was on the night of October 12, 2004. Tommy began trembling uncontrollably. No. Ask him, Samuel. No. Ask him why he still wakes up screaming every October. Tommy fell to his knees. And for the first time in 30 years, Samuel realized there were some truths far worse than death. No. Tommy's voice was barely a whisper. For 30 years, Samuel Hunter had prayed for his son's return. Now, for the first time since finding him, he was afraid to look into his eyes. Tell me he's lying, Samuel said. Tommy couldn't. His breathing became shallow. His hands began to shake. And then, without warning, the memories came flooding back. October 12, 2004. Tommy was 16 years old. The shepherds had spent 10 years teaching him to obey. 10 years teaching him that family was a weakness. 10 years teaching him that Samuel Hunter had abandoned him. But they had made one mistake. They had allowed him to keep one photograph. A photograph of Lucy. Every night, Tommy would stare at it and wonder what his mother sounded like. What she smelled like. Whether she still loved him. Then one day, Dr. Voss entered room 814. "Your mother found this place." Tommy remembered standing up so quickly that his chair fell over. "What?" "She's outside." "No." Dr. Voss nodded. "She wants to take you home." Tommy's entire world changed in that moment. "Then let me see her." The old man smiled sadly. "That's impossible." "Why?" "Because if she leaves here alive, everything we built dies with her." Tommy remembered fighting, screaming, begging, and then the injection. Everything after that became fragments. A hallway. Men in black uniforms. Lucy calling his name. And fire. So much fire. Back in the present, Tommy collapsed to the floor. "I remember." Samuel immediately knelt beside him. "Tommy, I remember all of it." Tears streamed down Tommy's face. "I didn't kill her." The entire room exhaled. "But I tried to save her." Samuel felt his heart stop. Tommy's memories continued. He remembered finding Lucy trapped beneath a fallen beam. He remembered trying to lift it. He remembered her touching his face for the first time in 10 years. "You've got your father's eyes." Samuel broke down instantly. Tommy could barely continue. "She knew who I was immediately." "Of course she did," Samuel whispered. Tommy nodded. "She told me to listen carefully." "What did she say?" Tommy looked directly at his father. "She said, 'Tell your father I never stopped believing.'" The room fell silent. Samuel removed his hat and wept openly. "There's something else," Tommy said. Everyone looked at him. "The fire wasn't an accident." Dr. Voss smiled on the monitor. "No, it wasn't." Tommy pointed at the screen. "He ordered it." Samuel slowly stood. "You burned her alive." Dr. Voss remained perfectly calm. "No, Samuel. I gave her a choice." "A choice?" "Leave alone, or die with the truth." Emily's hands trembled with rage. "You murdered her." Dr. Voss ignored her. "Your wife was extraordinary. Even at the very end, she refused to leave without her son." Samuel had spent 30 years hating himself for failing Lucy. Now he knew the truth. She had died doing exactly what he had spent his life trying to do. She had come for Tommy. Suddenly, Tommy remembered something else. The box. "What box?" Emily asked. Tommy's eyes widened. "Room 814. He immediately ran toward the back wall of the room. "What are you doing?" Samuel shouted. Tommy dropped to his knees beside the bed and reached beneath the floorboards. For several moments, no one spoke. Then he pulled out a small metal lockbox covered in dust. "I hid it after the fire." Inside were dozens of documents, photographs, maps, and a VHS tape labeled "The Final Shepherd." Emily opened one of the folders. Her face went white. "Samuel." "What?" She slowly handed him the first page. At the top, in bold letters, were the words, "Project Shepherd. Status Report. Subject 001, Samuel Hunter." Silence. Absolute silence. Samuel stared at the page. Then at Tommy. Then back at Dr. Voss. "What is this?" For the first time in the entire film, Dr. Adrian Voss smiled. "I was wondering when you discover the truth." Samuel's voice trembled. "You said Tommy was subject 814. He is." Then who am I? The old man leaned closer to the camera. The first child we ever took. The first child we ever took. The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Samuel couldn't breathe. No. Dr. Adrian Voss nodded slowly from the monitor. You were 6 years old when we found you. Samuel shook his head. You're lying. Am I? The old man pressed a button. A photograph appeared on the screen. A little boy standing outside Black Ridge facility. Dark hair. Blue eyes. A small cowboy hat. At the bottom of the photograph were 4 words. Subject 001, Samuel Hunter. The date beneath it read, May 12, 1964. Samuel felt the room begin to spin. I don't remember any of this. Of course you don't, Voss replied. That was the point. Memories came in fragments. A whistle. A long hallway. A woman singing. And a little boy crying in the dark. Samuel dropped to his knees. No! Tommy rushed to his side. Dad? They took me. The realization hit him all at once. They took me, and they gave me back. Dr. Voss smiled sadly. You were our greatest failure. Voss explained that Samuel had been the first child the shepherds had ever taken. Unlike the others, he never adapted. He fought. He escaped. At age 9, he disappeared into the woods surrounding Black Ridge. 3 days later, he was found by a local couple who adopted him and gave him a new name, Samuel Hunter. The irony, Voss said, is that you spent your entire life hunting us without realizing you were one of us. Emily stared at the monitor in disbelief. So this was all an experiment? No. Voss's expression darkened. This was a family. The shepherds are ending, the old man continued. I've spent 70 years preparing for tonight. Samuel slowly stood. What does that mean? It means my time is over. Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout Black Ridge facility. Tommy's face went pale. No! Red emergency lights flooded the halls. What is happening? Emily shouted. Voss looked directly into the camera. I built this place to survive me. And it won't. Samuel's eyes widened. You rigged the building. I prefer the term legacy. The countdown appeared on every monitor. Facility termination initiated. 9:59. Emily grabbed Samuel's arm. We have to go. But Samuel didn't move. You don't get to die before answering for this. Dr. Voss smiled. I already have. Then he said the words that would stay with Samuel forever. Look behind you. Samuel slowly turned. Pinned to the wall inside room 814 was a map. Not of Montana. Not of America. The entire world. Marked across it were hundreds of red dots. London. Tokyo. Sydney. Toronto. New York. Paris. And beside the map, a single sentence. The shepherds were never only in America. Emily's face drained of color. My God! Goodbye, Samuel. The monitor went black. 8 minutes remaining. The group ran through the collapsing hallways toward the exit. Behind them, decades of secrets began disappearing beneath fire and falling concrete. Halfway to the door, Samuel stopped. What are you doing? Tommy shouted. Samuel looked back at room 814 one last time. My wife spent her life trying to bring our family back together. He placed Tommy's ranger hat on his son's head. And she did. For the first time in 30 years, Tommy smiled. They escaped Black Ridge with less than a minute remaining. As Samuel's old pickup reached the edge of the mountain road, the facility erupted behind them in a massive explosion. Black Ridge was gone. The shepherds were gone. And for the first time in 68 years, Samuel Hunter was free. 6 months later, Black Creek had changed. Children laughed in the streets again. Emily Carter's book, The Cursed Hunter, had become a national bestseller. Sheriff Hayes finally reconciled with his daughter. And every Sunday afternoon, Samuel and Tommy sat beside Luce's grave. "I wish she'd met me like this," Tommy said quietly. Samuel smiled. "She did?" Tommy looked confused. Samuel pointed toward the headstone. Engraved beneath Lucy Hunter's name were the final words she ever spoke. "Tell your father I never stopped believing." Tommy began to cry. "So did I." Samuel looked toward the horizon. For the first time in his life, he wasn't chasing anything. No missing children. No symbols. No ghosts. Just tomorrow. And somewhere, beyond the mountains of Montana, a soft whistle carried through the wind. 3 short bursts. Samuel's smile faded. Because some curses never truly end.